Take all of these into consideration, and you find that it's much worse than just stagnating wages. It's basically middle-class families, often with two wage earners, working harder and harder and harder and getting nowhere.
That was a clip from an important documentary entitled Inequality for All, which demonstrates the dangers of America's vast disparity of wealth and the nation's ever-widening income gap. And the release of the film couldn't come at a better time, opening just a week after the House of Representatives voted to cut nearly $40 billion of nutritional aid over the next 10 years. Most beneficiaries of this programme, of course, are made up of children, the elderly and the disabled. Perhaps Professor Cornel West put it best when he described the cuts as morally obscene and spiritually profane. And yet, the Republican leadership in the House insists the bill is designed to promote work.
Most people don't choose to be on food stamps. Most people want a job. Most people want to go out and be productive so that they can earn a living, so that they can support a family, so that they can have hope for a more prosperous future. They want what we want.
They want what we want, us and them. And we wonder why there's inequality. For more, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the star of that documentary, former Labour Secretary under President Bill Clinton, Professor Robert Reich, and the film's director, Jacob Kornbluth. Professor Reich, last year, Mitt Romney told America that the nation is not endangered by an income gap. It's endangered by 47% of the population who are freeloaders and moochers. Who's right, you or Mr. Romney?
Well, unfortunately, Romney is absolutely wrong, and he's dangerously wrong. I mean, one of the reasons that we have so many people on food stamps is because their wages are so low. Most people on food stamps would be in dire poverty if they didn't have additional help. We're seeing the gap widen, and 95% of all of the gains, 95% of all of the gains that this economy has scored since the recession, since 2009, have gone to the top 1%. Median households are actually on a downward escalator. I mean, this is we have not seen this degree of inequality in this country by some measures in a century or more. And, the Republican view and the conservative view is, well, people are going to work hard if they're poor, if you take away the little bits that they have. But if they're rich, you've got to give them tax breaks,
of course,
so that they will work hard.
Of course, yeah.
It's the most bizarre doctrine that has no basis in empirical reality.
Jacob, why not make a romantic comedy or a film about shark fishing? Why partner with Professor Reich on this subject?
Well, it's the issue of our times. It's the largest issue of our times, and it meant a tremendous amount to me personally. The financial insecurity and the threats to the middle class are something that I live with every day, and I'm 40 years old. My whole life has been the story of this widening income inequality. We're at an emergency point in our country, and that's what this film's about.
Professor Reich, your critics have called you many things, and Bill O'Reilly has referred to you as a communist. You wrote about this this week for the New York Times, and here is Mr. O'Reilly responding to your column. Take a listen to him.
Why is he doing this again? I mean, what's in it? What's in it for him? Attention?
I think Robert Reich is trying to make a bigger point about the culture.
Are you? And if so, what is the bigger point you're trying to make?
Well, the bigger point is that we are at loggerheads in this culture, in this society now. A lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, mainly because people are not getting ahead, but it's being fueled. That anger and bitterness is also being fueled by the name-calling that we find, likes of Bill O'Reilly saying, I'm a communist. And that name-calling, that kind of vitriol in which one side is basically talking to its audience, the other side is talking to their audience, well, it's splitting America at a time, honestly, when we have to come together. If we're ever going to solve these problems, we've got to just stop all of the bickering.
Could I add to that?
You grew up, Jacob, in a family where you received state of support in terms of free school lunches and so on. Was your mother a moocher? Were your parents feckless freeloaders who were fraudsters trying to steal from the government?
Well, My mother was a hard-working, wonderful person.
No, she wasn't. She was taking benefits. According to them, she's a feckless freeloader and a fraudster.
Well, I was lucky that feckless freeloader and fraudster took the time to talk to me about what it meant to be a responsible adult so that I could grow up and make a movie that maybe could make a difference and come out around the country. And I want to get back to that previous point that Professor Reich was making about Bill O'Reilly, which is one thing we study in the film is that as widening income inequality grows, we see this society start to pull apart and partisanship in our democracy goes up. We feel sort of less cohesive as the economy becomes more stratified. Now, when you step out of the 24-hour news cycle and you see the larger story of what widening income inequality means,
sure,
that's what the movie does. That's what it contributes to the discussion of widening income inequality. It gives us that big picture view that I think everybody needs.
Professor Reich, you talk about this partisanship. I also was the recipient of free school meals. I also had a brother who had a severe disability that was no fault of his own. Without government support, our family would never have survived. Why is it now acceptable to treat people in need with rank contempt and to impugn every single one of their motives, as if helping two people who are on minimum wage jobs and still can't get by with a little bit of food stamps assistance, well, that's somehow wrong?
It's not only that some conservatives want to demonize the poor, Martin. It's also that they have been on a rampage for years telling the middle class that the reason the middle class is having so much difficulty getting ahead is because of the poor. Distracting attention from what's really happening in this country, which is that almost all of the economic gains are going to a very tiny group of people at the top.
Indeed they are. Professor Reich and Jacob Kornblith, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing the film Inequality for All.